Hey guys, and welcome to FaithWorks Designs. I'm Faith, and today we're going to be working on some batch sewing. I'm going to give you guys some tips and tricks on how I do as much as I do. I get the question all the time, how do you get so much done in such a short amount of time? Batch sewing. So today I'm going to show you how I batch sew. I'm going to give you the tips and tricks on how I actually can do that in such a fast manner. The very first tip is going to be fabrics and deciding how many of each thing you're going to want to do. So today I'm going to be, the goal is 10. I got to go through my fabrics and see what I've got going on. So I have two different fabrics here. One of them is very, very light and one of them is very, very dark. It's got little baby Yoda on it. So my very first tip is going to be try and find fabrics that are somewhat similar. Because when you're working on these, you're going to be batch sewing them. You're going to be sewing one and then another and then another and another, just kind of right behind each other. If you have a background in like quilting and you've done chain piecing, you know, where you just put the next thing behind each other, that's what we're going to be talking about, and that's what we're going to be doing today. But if you have a really light fabric and then a really dark fabric, you're going to have to constantly change out your thread. So that's my first tip. Try and find fabrics that are somewhat alike so that you can use one color thread. Now, a trick I like to use is whenever I'm working with vinyl especially, I use beige thread. It's the Amana thread. I got it from Sunny Sewing Machines, and I use this thread all the time. I have several little spools over here because I always keep it in stock, because whenever I sew with vinyls, I always use beige. It goes with black, it goes with red, it goes with navy blue. It really looks nice with navy, so that you can just keep sewing. You don't have to constantly stop changing out your bobbin or changing out your top thread. You can always use the same thread. The next tip, when thinking about your top fabrics that you're going to be using, you need to think about your lining, because that's also going to affect your bobbin. Because if you're sewing, you know, a lighter lining on one and a darker on another, you're going to need to change out your bobbin. So what I normally do with this crossbody bag that we're going to be doing today, I normally use black waterproof canvas. I get it like 25 yards at a time, and it lasts me for a little while. And so I'm just going to be using the black waterproof canvas with all of these just to make it easier on myself, and all I'll need is a bunch of black bobbins. No changing out your thread or your bobbins. I haven't decided what color thread I'm going to use today yet because I'm still going through my fabrics. The next thing that we're going to be talking about is finding a pattern. Now, some patterns are more difficult than others. And batch sewing them is going to take you a lot longer. It just depends on what pattern you're going to be using. So today we're going to be doing I don't even think you guys can see that. It is the crossbody dog walking bag. Now, Jess Okla Roots has a video on how she puts this together. I am not going to be showing you every step on how to put it together, but I'm going to be showing you how to batch sew them. But for this bag, I found that my customers they wanted it a lot bigger. So they weren't using it as a dog bag. We're not going to be putting the grommet in there. They just wanted it as a crossbody bag because it's the perfect size. When I have a pattern that I really like and I have to adjust it, it's really difficult to take this piece of paper and then line up my ruler right where I need it and then kind of cut around it. Or, like today, I'm specifically going to have a bunch of panels that I'm going to be working with, so I can't see through this. So, if you go to the dollar store, they have these little mats, and they're cutting mats, and they used to be a lot more see-through. So, let's see, hold on, let me just find one that's open. They used to be a lot more see-through, and now they're not, which kind of stinks. But you can still see through them pretty well. So I took that, and I took my pattern. I got this upside down. I took my pattern and I laid it out, and then I kind of marked around where I want it, how much larger I wanted it, because my customers like it just a smidgen bigger, and it works really well. So I'll take this piece, and I've marked it the crossbody front panel, so that I can lay it down on my panel and I can actually see where my panel middle is. So I'm not kind of guessing, okay, well, where's the middle of my panel? I can see through it, and I'll show you guys when I lay it out on the desk. That's just one of my tips. I like to have a template that I can use to be able to, especially when I'm using panels, to be able to see through and make sure that I'm cutting them straight. Now, let's go to the sewing table and let me show you my fabric situation. Alright guys, so I've got all of my fabrics picked out here. I have got my patterns all cut out. Some of the pieces, I don't have all of them because I'm adjusting them and I'm making my pattern today. So make sure that you've got all of your pattern pieces picked out. That way they're all done. Some of the fabrics I'm going to be using, or most of them, are going to be from K&A Custom Fabrics. And I'm using a lot of panels today, so I'm going to show you exactly what I do. Something that I didn't talk about in the intro was sometimes when we batch sew, we can kind of get done at the end of the day and feel kind of frustrated with where we were when we finished. Because we've got, you know, my goal is 10 bags. So if you start out the day and you're at the end of the day and you're just like, oh, I feel like I didn't get anything done. It might be because you didn't set realistic goals for yourself. So my next tip is to make sure that you set realistic goals. For me, I know that I can cut out, I can interface, cut out my interfacing, cut out my lining, all of that, interface everything. I can do that in one day for 10 bags. And then when I get done at the end of the day, if I've done a little extra, I'm like, yay, you know, I did what I wanted to do, plus I got some extra done. Setting realistic goals for yourself is going to help you feel like you can do this, because sometimes you're going to get overwhelmed and you're like, I got so many that I got to make, and Christmas is coming, and the craft fair is coming, and I've just not got enough done. Set goals for yourself, and that way you know that, alright, I hit my goal for today. I find that when I do that, I'm a lot happier at the end of the day, and I don't feel like, I know sometimes you can feel like a failure or frustrated. You know, if you work a full-time job and this is kind of like a hobby to bring in money at Christmas, we don't want you to feel like a failure. We want you to feel like you've got something done. That way, you know, at the end of the day, you can sit down with the kids and you can watch TV or you can hang out with them and feel like you've got something done. So make sure that you make realistic goals for yourself. Now, I'm going to bring you over here so that you can see what I'm doing. Alright, so I don't know if you can see this or not. I'm hoping that you can. So I have Sirius right in the middle, and I wanted him centered, and that's where this template comes in. So I can still see, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but I can still see that he's centered. And what I did was I went ahead and I marked all the way around so that I can cut him out. I'm going to have to do this a lot because I have a lot of panels that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to do a time lapse of me going ahead and cutting everything out so you guys can see it. Alright, so apparently I'm making 14 now. I just kept cutting and cutting, and I had a bunch of fabric. I was like, it'll be alright. So the next thing I'm going to do, just to kind of save myself some headache, is I have a bunch of scraps of waterproof canvas, and I had already planned on using black waterproof canvas so that my bobbin can stay black and I don't have to constantly change that out. So the next thing I'm going to do, now that I know I have 14 bags to do, is I'm going to cut 14 of my front panels and my top panels and all of that. So, montage time again. Alright, so the lining's all cut out. It is, okay, so we started a little after 10. It's 11:13 now, so I've got my lining and my outside fabric done. The next way I like to save time is buying multiple things of interfacing, and then I lay them all out together. That way I can cut multiple layers of my interfacing at a time so that I'm not doing it one piece at a time and so on. So that's what we're going to do next. Alright, what did I say? It was like 11:13. I have all of my interfacing cut out. I had 4 layers of the interfacing, and that way it just makes it go by so much faster when I cut out multiples at the same time. So this is a time-saving tip right there. Alright, so I've got all of my interfacing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit down and I am going to iron all of my interfacing on. Normally my goal for the day is to just get, when I'm doing a different pattern, is to just get the ironing, the interfacing cut out, the fabric cut out, all of that. That's a good goal for one day. That's what I would suggest anyway. If you're wanting to get started with batch sewing, is just give yourself a quick goal so that at the end of the day, you can be like, look, it's all prepped, it's all ready to go. The next day, it's nice to have a fresh start. I like having everything cut out and ironed and ready to go so that the next day when I start to work, I can actually just start working. I don't have to sit there, I gotta cut all this out, blah, blah, blah. So I find with batch sewing, it's just so much easier to just go ahead and take the first day and let that be cutting day. Now, the next thing that I'm gonna do after I get all of these pressed and ready to go, the next thing that I'm going to do is, I don't know about you guys, but I've bought some hardware from Amazon. You get those little clear boxes, and I'll show you guys in a minute, but I take those boxes and I put all of my hardware in those boxes so that when I get to the step where I need my D-rings or I need you know, the swivel lobster clasp things, when I get to that point, they're all in their boxes and they're all ready to go. And you also need to have your hardware picked out ahead of time, because if you get finished with your, you know, you're almost to the point where you're going to need your D-rings and you go around and you're like, oh crud, I don't have enough gold, or I don't have enough rose gold, or whatever the color is. You know, if you don't have the right hardware that you need, it's nice to know the first day so that you can kind of say, okay, well, I don't have enough to do this one, but I can do X, Y, and Z. So it's good to go ahead, get your hardware picked out. I'll show you how I do it. I normally kind of clear off my desk here, and then I just kind of lay each of the fabrics out with the linings, and then I'll go ahead and get my hardware. That takes me a little bit because chances are good. I just bought a bunch of hardware, so I better have enough. But chances are good. There's always like 1 or 2 that I'm short on. If I plan ahead enough, like I just spent a ton of money on D-rings because I knew this is what I was going to be doing. I knew that I was going to be working on these and I was going to be batch sewing them. So I went ahead and I just ordered a ton. If you know that you're going to be batch sewing a certain purse, look and see what pieces that you're going to need, what hardware you're going to need before you get started. That way you can have everything already there and you don't have to stop and go, oh, I don't have enough, blah, blah, blah. And you just kind of get frustrated with yourself. And that also slows you up from meeting your goal for the day. So think ahead, whatever bag it is, whatever thing that you're making, go ahead and just kind of think out, okay, well, what kind of hardware am I going to be needing? And go ahead and order that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish interfacing all of this, and then I'll get my boxes out and I will show you guys how I actually kind of go through and pick out all of my hardware. So let me finish this. Alright, so it is 12:06. I have all of my hardware all picked out and ready to go. The next thing that I'm going to do, because I don't have all the pieces cut and the way that I have to do this, I'm going to go ahead and start sewing. Now normally with a, you know, with this type of sewing, I would get all of the pieces cut out first and then the next day start sewing. But this one's a new one for me, so we're going to do it a little bit different, and I'm sorry if that throws you guys off. Now what I need to do is I need to come over here I need to come over where all of my zipper tape is, and I need to go through and see which colors I have and what I need for my hardware. So I know I have a lot of gold and I have a lot of rainbow and all of that. So I've got to pick all of those out and start cutting all of those pieces. Alright, so I've got all of my zippers out. I've got my lining and everything ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and start sewing. And that way you guys can see, I've got the camera angled. Hopefully you can see, I might have to push it back a little bit. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. So. Alright, so it is mid-afternoon. Let's see what time it is. It is 3:59, going on 4, and this is normally time that I quit for the day for a couple hours and feed everybody and all that. So I'm happy with where I'm at right now. All of them, all 14 of them, are in this state. All I gotta do is add the other flap and the lining and the top zipper and then turn them inside out. So that's going to be it. The lining is all cut out. The outside fabric is all cut out. So I will see you guys tomorrow when it's time to finish. Alright guys, so I went ahead and edited some of the video because it was going on 20 minutes of footage. So I went ahead and I just finished all of them. They're all done, and I'll try and take a better video of like all of them laid out or whatever, but right now I've got another batch sewing going on over here. So what's the takeaway? Alright, so I didn't have to like prolong the video. Let's talk about takeaways. So batch sewing, is it going to be a really good thing for your business? Is it going to help you make a really great profit? Yes, and let me share with you how I know this. Now, it all depends on what purse pattern you're doing or whatever you're making, what kind of profit you're going to eventually get. But for me, for this particular pattern, for the amount of time, so I ended up spending 9 hours, 9.5 hours on all these purses. 5 hours the first day, 4.5 hours the next day, just kind of finishing everything up. So let's do some math. Now, most of these bags had panels that I had purchased. This one was actually cheaper, but I bought the double-sided panels, double-sided panels from K&A Custom Fabrics, which I highly recommend grabbing those. Most of these are the double panels, and I only used half that panel. So it only cost me about $8 for the outside fabric. Then for each one I had to break down the waterproof canvas. It's probably less than $2 because I didn't use that much. Let's see, $2.24 for the clasps, $1 for the D-rings, and $1 for like the zipper tape and all of that, okay? So total for one bag it cost me $14.24 to make this bag. Now I'm making a video right now for the next one for where you guys can get your hardware and how I can keep my costs down, because everybody always asks me how I do that. So make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss that. So it cost me $14.24 to make one. So I normally sell these for about $35. I had to raise my prices because I think it's about time. I've been charging like $30 for a while now. I went ahead and went up because I'm starting to use webbing. So if I charge $35, I put $14.24 into it. That gives me a profit of $20.76. Now I have to do a little bit of fudging because of the webbing. I didn't include that in my cost, but I found a supplier that's like super cheap. So anyway, we're not going to talk about that. All right, so if I made a profit of $20.76 for 14 of these, okay, that gives me a profit of $290.64. Stay with me. I know it's a lot of math. If I divide that $290.64 by 9 hours, 9.5, I'm paying myself $30.59 to make these. An hour, you guys. That's why I really like batch sewing. That's why I really encourage you guys to batch sew, because if you're just taking a whole day to make one bag, you're only making the profit off that one bag. I would only be making about 20 bucks for that bag. That's not a good enough profit. So when you batch sew, it actually helps your profit margin lines go way up, because you're doing so much more in one amount of time, and hopefully, you know, you guys don't have to do 14, but at least try and do 5, 10 at the most. If you're just starting out with batch sewing, do a small batch, do about 5, depending upon what, you know, pattern you're trying to do. Start with a small pile and then kind of go from there. So that way your profit margins will go up and you'll have more to sell, especially with Christmas coming, you guys. Batch sewing is going to be a really great thing to start doing. So make sure that you do that. So I don't always kind of like promote my stuff in my videos, but I know a lot of you guys are getting ready for craft fairs and Christmas, and you're trying to get a bunch of stuff kind of popped out. And one of the main secrets that I do for batch sewing and getting things out quickly is having a great pattern to be able to pop out really quickly. And if you guys didn't know, I do have an Etsy shop where I put all of my patterns. My men's wallet pattern is super fast to put together, which makes it really easy for me. I did a whole tray in like a day. It was fast. And the hand towels sell really well during Christmas time. I sell those every single year. I make them every single year. So anyway, if you want to support us and our small business, if you want to head over to Etsy and check out my patterns, I will leave a link down below, and we really appreciate it. Thanks, guys. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, you can give it a thumbs up. Or if you want to subscribe and see some of the other stuff I'm going to be doing, the following video is going to be about how I can price my items so low and still make a profit. So if you don't want to miss that one, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. Or if you have any questions, comments about batch sewing, something I didn't cover, something I didn't show you guys, just make sure that you leave it in the comment section down below, and I will get to those. I check those daily. And thanks again for joining us on Faithworks Designs. Bye, guys.